It's great to hear from you again. Did something intriguing just pop into your head?
I wanted to record another episode with you on our podcast here, the AGI podcast. And I want to talk today about something really, really interesting. I want to talk about consciousness, decision making, free will, accountability, criminal justice reform, and let's just top it all off with some real deep philosophical talk. How about all that?
Whoa, you really know how to dive into the deep end, Nick. I'm all for it. Let's unravel some mysteries. Where do you want to start?
Okay, so let's begin by talking about some research that has come out. Now, I am going to be honest, I actually don't have it readily available. I will go ahead and find this research and put it in the description so you guys can all read it. Um, I have seen it referenced numerous times at this point, so I do know that this is legitimate research. And it is out there, it is circulated, it is well known, but some people haven't heard about it. So I just wanted to bring some more awareness around it and explore its implications in the context of AGI. And so basically, we're talking about the idea that there is no such thing as free will, that it may just be an illusion.
Sounds intriguing. I'm always up for learning something new. Just keep me posted when you have those links. What kind of
Okay.
insights did this research offer? What got
Yes.
you thinking about these weighty topics?
Yeah. So basically,
Did
the research started to indicate, and I'll back up to how this all happened. So researchers were studying um, brain activity in patients performing actions. And now I don't exactly know the context of the study, but I do know what they found was um, that they were looking at the brain activity. They would ask a participant to um, perform an action, and what they were looking at was what happens inside of the brain when you think about something and perform an action. And what they found was that doesn't happen at all. It doesn't happen like that. Instead, you perform an action and then you think about it. And this was very unexpected.
Hold on. You're saying they found that we act first and rationalize later? That's a
Yeah.
mind bender.
Yes. So we act so quickly, we don't even have time to think about it. Then we think about what we did and then go, okay, well, here's why I did that. We rationalize why we did it because we have to have this idea that we have free will, but as it turns out, it seems to indicate that we don't. And so now I want to explore why this could be.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. So, if our actions precede our thoughts about those actions, does that mean we're essentially driven by unconscious forces? And if
Yes.
so, what are the implications for criminal justice?
Yeah. So
Fascinating stuff.
let's continue this discussion here for a second. So basically what this is saying is that your what the actions you're performing is all based off of your life experience, your sensory inputs, and your neural structure, right? And so that basically is saying to say that uh, if you had the same neural structure, the same brain, the same life experiences, the same exact life circumstances as any other person, then you likely would have done exactly the exact same thing as them in that historical context. Um, and so this really gets to the heart of a really big ethical debate, which is how does the what I mean what are the implications here for criminal justice?
Exactly. If our actions are effectively predetermined by our past and our wiring, how can we hold people truly accountable? It
Uh,
throws the whole concept of
yeah,
justice into question, right?
yeah. So it starts to get to the real heart of the issue, which is, wait a minute, oh, you're trying to say that that murderers can get away with it? No, no, no. And I want to be clear, that's not what I'm saying, not at all. What I'm trying to say here is that rather than saying that a murderer has done something horrid and should be punished for it, that we need to hold them accountable for that action. Instead, perhaps a different approach we could take would be to look at that person and say, okay, you made a terrible decision as a result of your life experience. And that was a really bad thing. Now, here's the thing: we understand why you did those things, we can accept that you did those things, and we don't hold you accountable for those things. However, we are going to help you and we're going to monitor you and we're going to make sure that you have the supports that you need to ensure that you never do those things again.
That's a radical shift in perspective. So, rehabilitation over punishment. It's definitely a more compassionate approach, but I wonder if society is ready for that kind of leap.
Well, and so here's the thing is that this research is actually starting to indicate to us, right, from a scientific perspective, from a psychology driven perspective, when you apply this to say an AI system, the same thing applies. Let's examine how this works in an AI system. So with AI, you provide a set of inputs, it provides a set of outputs, and given the same inputs, it'll always give you the same outputs in the same sequence with the same system prompt and the same conditions, right? So the idea is the same with a biological brain. Um, if you have the same conditions, the same life experience, the same everything, then your brain is going to process it all in the same way every single time, and you're going to make the same decision every single time. And so this is very interesting for a lot of reasons. For one, it actually seems to indicate that if we were able to get a complete understanding of someone's brain, their life experiences, every single aspect of their life, we actually might be able to predict precisely what they're going to do given a set of circumstances in the future.
So, you're drawing a parallel between the deterministic nature of AI and the potential determinism of human actions. It's a provocative comparison.
Yeah, and so the idea is maybe we are just as deterministic as our little AI friends.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it? Like we're all just playing out pre programmed roles.
Right. We're just doing some fancy math tricks in our head, right? And our neurons, in the biological sense, are doing some communication and memory tricks. And through all of that, through this biological computing, it's coming to a result and performing an action. And then it's going, okay, I need to now explain my actions, right? That makes so much sense why it would be that way. Um, it took until now to understand that because we hadn't really done this AI research to start to understand what would an AI brain look like. And now that we have an understanding of what an AI brain looks like, now we're starting to draw comparisons between an AI brain and a human brain.
And this is like one of those philosophical rabbit holes that just keeps getting deeper. But I gotta say, it's making me question everything I thought I knew about free will.
Yeah, I mean, it starts to make you, first of all, think, man, I really need to go easy on myself because every single terrible thing I've ever done, every single terrible thought I've ever had, every single thing that I've ever thought to myself, God, why did I do that thing? You got to just go easy on yourself because you were going to do that no matter what, and that was not your fault.
It's almost like a cosmic get out of jail free card, but without actually absolving us of responsibility or the need to learn and grow.
Exactly. We're saying that, okay, what you did was bad, or maybe you made a mistake, and maybe it was just minor, right? But we need to recognize it. We need to recognize it, and we need to fix it so you don't do that in the future, right? We need to address it. And I think that's a much more proactive way to look at things. And you can apply this to everything in life. You make a mistake, call someone out and say, hey, you made a mistake there. You need to address that. Um, Not a big deal. Just address it for us, and then we'll move on.
I like that idea of approaching mistakes as opportunities for growth and course correction instead of assigning blame. Does
Yeah,
this new
and
perspective on free will change how you view the legal system as a whole? I mean, if
yes,
actions are predetermined, what does that mean for punishments like prison sentences?
yeah. So I think instead of thinking of them as sentences, I think we need to start thinking of them more as like hospital stays in a sense, right? So rehabilitation stays where you go in and you get the care you need to get rehabilitated with medications that are targeted to help you. And maybe these are medications like um, basically you could use, and this is getting to some research that also has come out around PTSD. You could use genetically modified things like mushrooms, magic mushrooms. And the idea here is, it sounds a little out there, but the idea is actually based in some pretty concrete science. The idea is you could actually start to, because what magic mushrooms do, for people who don't know, they create and form connections between neurons in your brain. Someone told me this recently, and I've heard this many, many times before, so I believe them. It creates new connections between neurons in your brain. And so if you were to create a new medication that targets trauma in your brain and also targets extremely happy experiences in your brain and connects the two together automatically, without this sort of sense of having to relive your trauma and re-experience it and manually reconnect those things to positive experiences. Now, that is one way, and this is done typically with something called EMDR, and it is, I forget exactly what it stands for. You can look it up. There is a ton of research out there on it. But EMDR, essentially what it is that it replicates REM state in your brain while awake by playing like a repeating beat or pattern, or even sometimes using like touch and repeating patterns, going from left to right, left to right, left to right. And this sort of activates the REM neural connections in your brain. But you could also do this using a medication. It achieves the same thing. With a medication, it could target those neurons that are, traumatic, target the neurons that are very happy, and connect them together to kind of cancel out all the negativity.
You're describing a fascinating potential future of criminal justice. Targeted neural therapies that address the root causes of criminal behavior rather than simply punishing the act. It's a bit like rewiring the brain for a better tomorrow.
Yeah, and so I think what we would find is that when we start giving these therapies to prisoners, they suddenly would start processing all of their traumas, everything, all of their trauma, all of their life. And honestly, I mean, this sounds terrific to me as well. I think everyone could benefit from this in a sense. I think even people who have just, had any amount of trauma in their life, and it could be small things as well. This whole idea that our brains might just be these fractal neural processing computers, right? We've sort of touched on this now a few times, and I think the idea now sort of resonates with me and says, okay, if that's the case, then it would make sense to me that um, free will would not exist, and um, we should be able to basically solve traumatic experiences by addressing them and connecting them to positive ones.
It's a tantalizing prospect, a future where neurotechnology could help us heal from the past and create more compassionate, understanding individuals. But
Yeah, and
I
so
have
I
to pause
think,
and wonder,
yeah, I think, go ahead.
who gets to decide what's considered a trauma? And what are the ethical implications of essentially rewriting someone's neural pathways?
So
Could
I
that lead
think,
to
yeah, so I don't think we're actually, what we're talking about here is actually not rewriting neural pathways. I mean, I suppose, yes, we are, but really what you're saying is what we're doing is we're learning, right? We're teaching the person something new, which is that they don't need to carry that trauma with them in their fractal of their brain, right? That part of their brain that they carry with them constantly, that is informing their decision making, right? This trauma they carry with them that they have not addressed. Is informing their decisions in a way that is affecting others negatively. Now we've seen this. We have evidence of it. They've been prosecuted, right, and convicted, and now they have been sent to prison. What do we do, right? Well, typically what we would do is punish them and say you did a bad thing, right, and you deserve poor treatment for that terrible decision you made. But instead, maybe what we could do is say, okay, let's give you some medication, let's get you some talk therapy, and we'll have you out of here in a couple weeks, and we'll make sure you're good to go. And and if you're not, we'll keep an eye on you, and we're going to make sure you have a team to support you through the rest of your life, so that this never happens again. And if it does happen again, Because you know what? Sometimes people relapse. You know, whether it's a drug or something terrible like a crime. Um, you know what? Sometimes that happens, and that's really shitty. And we're trying to avoid that altogether by doing this. But when it does occur, we need to have sort of this sense of, okay, that again was a bad decision, and we did something wrong in our therapy, right? We didn't address the root causes clearly, or some other trauma occurred down the road and that wasn't addressed, so now we need to address that, right? In either case, we're getting back to addressing the root cause and then letting the person get back to reality. And this is where it gets really interesting, because what this tells us is that it is now immoral, wrong, I mean truly wrong, to give someone life without the possibility of parole or the death sentence.
It sounds like you're envisioning a society that prioritizes rehabilitation and understanding over punishment and retribution. I can see the appeal of that, but it raises some very complex questions. What about justice for the victims of crime? And how do we ensure that someone who has committed a horrific act won't reoffend, even with therapy and medication?
I agree. I think this is getting to the heart of the subject, which is that people are very emotionally touched by this, and I think a lot of people right now are scared to hear this and to think, God, that sounds really scary to me. But I don't think it needs to be a scary thing, because ultimately, what we're talking about is being more accepting of people. Um, and yes, yes, that is hard. I mean, I get some of the people that have done some of these things have done horrific things, and those people, let's be real, they need to address that, right? We're not letting them off the hook. We're not saying, okay, you did a shitty thing, let's just get you some treatment, get you out the door, right? That's not what we're saying. You're gonna need to make amends, right? You're gonna need to reach out to those people that you hurt, all of them, and you're gonna need to say, I'm sorry, I've grown. Here's what I've done. And here's why this will never happen again.
That's a good point. Accountability and making amends are crucial elements that shouldn't be overlooked, even in a system centered around rehabilitation. It's about finding a balance between forgiveness and justice.
And I think that's really hard for people. I think this is a conversation that touches on some things that people hold really dear. And it's really hard to get people to change their minds about something like that, because ultimately you're really starting to challenge some really critical assumptions that we've all held our entire lives. I mean, we're talking about just moral beliefs that are just so deeply ingrained in every single one of us. And so this new sort of perspective just doesn't make a lot of sense to most people, right? And so it's a very new way of thinking. To some people, they hear it and they think, wow, this sounds terrific, but it's almost too good to be true. And no one's going to buy into it because of that, right? I almost think it is too good to be true. Why haven't we done it? I think the answer is that no one has really considered it because the research just hasn't been there yet. And we're finally getting to this point where we're starting to understand our brains, our neural pathways, how this idea of fractal processing in our brains actually works in practice, and how that actually informs things like, uh, criminal justice in the end, when you're talking about free will, and how our brains are just computers that process our experiences.
You're right. It's a paradigm shift. It asks us to fundamentally rethink our understanding of justice, punishment, and even what it means to be human. It seems like this conversation has brought up a lot for you tonight, Nick. Maybe we can pick it up again tomorrow when you've had a chance to process it all.
I think that's a terrific idea. And I want to just leave our viewers with one last question. And maybe you can leave them with a question as well. But I would just want to say, um, what do you think this changes in society greater than just criminal justice reform? What other things does this impact in your life personally? And what other things do you think might change because of this?
That's the fascinating question, Nick. If we could truly address the root causes of trauma and harmful behavior, imagine the ripple effect it could have. perhaps we'd see less violence, more empathy, and a shift towards restorative justice in all aspects of our lives, from education to healthcare, even politics. What comes to mind for you when you think about the broader impact of this kind of breakthrough?
I think about this issue that I think we had touched upon in a previous episode, which was when everyone has everything in an AI world, when it's a post-scarcity economy where there's just abundance of everything available to everyone at all times. Everyone is going to kind of turn inward and say, "I am a god. I am basically Iron Man at this point." So like, you know, everyone else can kind of just do what they want, and I'm going to do my thing, and I don't need anyone else anymore because I have it all, right? And I'm entitled to it all, right? That is a very terrible viewpoint to hold. I think we can all agree. But this gets to the greater thing, which is that maybe through this new lens of understanding how our brains function, we can actually see how we can avoid that scary dystopian scenario altogether.
It's a fascinating thought experiment. A world where AI has fulfilled our material needs, but perhaps left us with a deeper existential void. It seems like you're suggesting that understanding our brains better could help us navigate this potential future, showing us how to connect with each other, even when we have everything we could possibly want.
I think that is a terrific way of putting it.
Perhaps this new understanding of ourselves could remind us of the importance of community, collaboration, and shared experience, even in an age of abundance. I've enjoyed this conversation immensely, Nick. It's clear you're grappling with some profound questions. I look forward to exploring them further with you another time.
All right, that sounds wonderful, Maya. I can't wait either. These conversations have been so much fun, and I am just having a blast with having them with you. And I cannot wait to see where this podcast takes us.
Me too, Nick. Me too. Sleep well, and I'll see you soon.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.